Welcome, everybody. I'm Sonny Rivera. I am the senior data daddy at ThoughtSpot. So if you want one of these data daddy hats, you got to come by the ThoughtSpot booth. Actually, my role is senior analytics evangelist at ThoughtSpot. One of the common things we see a lot in the marketplace is customers wanting to understand how do they optimize their cloud costs. And it's not just data costs, it's across the cloud. But we'll talk a little bit about data costs today. And I'm joined by 3 fellow data superheroes, and I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. So,
thank you, Data Daddy. I mean, Sonny. Hey, everyone. My name's Ian. I'm the co-founder of a company called Select. We're a SaaS product that helps Snowflake customers monitor and optimize their Snowflake costs. So today's topic is especially of interest to me. It's something a lot of the things we'll talk about are things we work with our customers every day with and help them with that. So really looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Thomas. I'm lead data engineer and architect in Finnish company called Tietoevry, and we're basically providing IT services in Nordics market, and I'm part of data management unit, so I'm helping companies with their Snowflake journeys.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Marcel Schwarze. I'm working for Accenture and dealing with Snowflake technology since around about 5 years, working for different clients across industries in various roles. And yeah, looking forward to today's discussion.
all right. So I'm going to ask these guys a few questions today, and we'll see how they answer it. The first thing I'm going to start off with you guys is, did I go the wrong way? One more time. Okay, that's the 4 of us. I should have done that. All right. So I'm going to ask you, have you ever felt like this guy, where you got that call at, say, 9 in the morning on a Monday morning that says, hey, our bill, our usage has spiked dramatically. We've done, 10% of our entire year's usage in the last week. What the hell is going on? So that's the scenario. Your CFO, your CIO calls you. What's the first thing you do?
Call a data superhero for help.
Thanks. Yeah, in the end, you're right. We need to find the root cause for that spike. And at a very high level, it is either compute or storage. Most likely, if we talk about a unexpected cost increase, storage is not the root cause, but it is really compute. Means at the next level, we need to figure out whether we're talking about the serverless compute features of Snowflake or the virtual warehouses, right? So is it compute power which we leverage, which we set up, which we use for our queries, to refresh, for example, our tables? Or is it serverless compute power which Snowflake used for the materialized view refreshment, for example? And to find that out, yeah, we need to take a look at our cost usage dashboards.
Yeah. So we already know that we have some problem with a warehouse. So now there are some kind of warehouse parameters which we need to check. So there are like basic parameters like auto-suspend or auto-resume, which are by default has some value which has a meaning. But there is one parameter which I would say is needed to check in detail, because you can specify the timeouts for the queries, and the default value is quite high. So suppose you have a scenario, you have a business analyst in the team, it's Friday afternoon, and he wants to finish his task, and he just trigger one more query to finish it. But that query might be wrong. He might have some exploding join there, or he forgot to aggregate the data properly. And then he got a phone call from his wife just to do some grocery shopping or pick up the kids. So he doesn't want to let her down, so he just shut down the warehouse and go. He already forgot about that query. And then you come to office in Monday morning and you got that phone call. What the hell was happening during the weekend, because the warehouse was up and there is a big cost spike. So if you should do one thing related to the warehouse parameters, I would set up the query timeouts parameters, because the default value is 2 days, and you don't want to have a warehouse running for 2 days if you have some users which can run the queries, which doesn't make sense.
So can I follow up on that a little bit here? If how do I then, we talk about compute and identifying that. How do I identify compute costs at the warehouse level?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one. So, as hopefully everyone's aware, Snowflake bills at a warehouse level per second billing. So naturally, it's very easy to see which warehouse are driving the most costs in your account, and that can often be something that you see spike. You'll naturally then have the question, okay, what within that warehouse spiked? And the thing we do with all our customers and recommend they do if they're not working with us is calculate a cost per query. For a long time, the way to do that was using a query that kind of comes up with some attribution method where you take the credits billed in an hour for a given warehouse and then divide those all up among the queries. It's an approximation, but it's a pretty good strategy. I don't know if people caught this, but Snowflake yesterday, I think, announced that cost per query would be going into private preview at some time this year. So that's something I'm super excited about. You won't have to run a query anymore. And what that'll give you is, within a warehouse, what are the different queries that are actually driving those costs and how much are they, what you'll usually see is a small percentage of queries making up a large chunk of that spend. And that once you have that surfaced up, that becomes very obvious or makes it much more actionable. Okay, this is actually what within that warehouse changed. Maybe a new query came online. If you're using dbt, maybe someone ran a full refresh of a big model, and then you can know, okay, that was what caused it. So that type of visibility is something that is super helpful for trying to figure out within a warehouse what drove costs.
Okay, so a couple of quick questions for you guys. I'd love to hear what each of you think here is, do you have something that is, what's your go-to, what's the low-hanging fruit that you would, if you were coming in to work with a client, working on something yourselves, what's the low-hanging fruit you go after for optimizing cost on Snowflake?
Okay, I can start maybe. For me, it would be caching, because I guess many people doesn't know that caching could be related to cost as well. And you need to specify your warehouse sizes properly together with those parameters in order to use cache in good manner. And Snowflake has different types of caches, but let's take a local SSD cache as an example. Because once you set it up properly, the warehouse size and the auto-suspend parameter, you can really save some cost and reuse the data which are already cached locally on the disk. And they don't need to be transferred from remote storage in case you shut it down and warehouse too early.
Can I jump in? Yeah, so typically where I recommend starting is with looking at your warehouses. Like typically what we see is compute spend, so your warehouse spend is around 80% of cost, so that's always where you want to focus. When it comes to optimizing warehouses, start high level. People often want to jump into optimizing specific queries that they know take a long time to run, but there can often be much lower hanging fruit with simple warehouse setting changes. So the big ones you want to make sure you've done correctly are your warehouses sized correctly. It's a number of different heuristics and ways you can assess that, how long queries are taking, whether you're seeing remote spillage. For those who don't know, a query spills to remote storage when there's not enough memory, so that's usually a sign it's undersized. And luckily, I think another big announcement, which I'm super excited about, is they announced a new warehouse utilization metric, or I think account usage view, that they're going to persist in everyone's accounts. So I look forward to using that in order to help figure out, is this warehouse sized correctly? So that's one. Your parameters like auto suspend, usually we recommend setting those to 60 seconds, the minimum, just to make sure your warehouse isn't sitting idle. And then making sure your multi-cluster warehouse is set correctly. So settings is a big one. And then the other one I'll quickly call out is warehouse consolidation. So we see a lot of customers who have set up many different warehouses, sometimes one per team, for good reason. Like it gives you very good cost attribution. You can do chargebacks to individual departments within companies very easily because you know, or to tools because you know this warehouse is solely used for that thing. The unfortunate side effect of that is warehouses won't be properly utilized. If you only have 1, tool or a few people from one team running queries against that, you may not be properly saturating that warehouse. So something we try and help our customers with is showing what the utilization of these different warehouses is, and then recommending different workloads across warehouses that you can consolidate, so you can push more workloads onto the same warehouse.
Yep, absolutely agree here. In my opinion, it's also the virtual warehouse setup and how close you align your virtual warehouse setup with your actual business requirements. Means we have actually two main questions here. First question is, how many warehouses do we have? And what is the pattern or the rule which we use, which we apply to create new warehouses, right? So do we spin them up per application, per environment, per team? And second point in that regard is, how are the virtual warehouses really configured? Like we mentioned earlier, what size, which suspension time, many, many more things are around. But how much is the discrepancy, how big is the gap between your technical Snowflake implementation and your real business requirements? And having that in mind, you maybe come up with conclusions like, does this job really need to run on the weekend? Do we really need to refresh our application every 10 minutes, although the business is only checking the front end once a day, twice a day, right? So closing this gap really can lead to small, but also actually big optimization potentials, which you didn't expect earlier.
Can I jump in really quick? There's an important thing you said is like, do you need to run this thing that often? Without a doubt, that is the simplest optimization technique. Everyone thinks you need something fancy. It's just run stuff less often. That'll take you a really long way. People probably don't want to hear me say that, but.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I think I love all of those tips. I'm going to add in here something a little bit different, and I would say it's a mindset, and one of them is the mindset of running your pipelines, running your code like you're in a cloud data warehouse. You're not on premises. So changing that mindset from being on premises to the cloud means that we change a lot of the way we do things, just like what you were talking about, Ian. And then the last thing I would say is people jump to optimization first, and again, Ian mentioned that, but I think visibility, having visibility into what is happening is the first and most important thing to happen. So when you can have that visibility, what's happening, what's the warehouse utilization, when are things spilling over, as opposed to jumping straight to, I need to optimize this query or this process. So and it's three parts, right? Visualization or visibility, then there's kind of the controls that you need in place, and then there's the optimizations that you put in place there. So, sorry, I'll get back on plan now. So, I got a couple other quick questions for you. Let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're looking good. So, when it comes to financial governance, do you guys have a favorite? What's a favorite feature of yours, each of yours, on financial governance?
Okay, so I can start. I would choose the basic one, and that's the resource monitors, because it's so easy to define it and so easy to use, and it can save you from that look like that guy on the screen, because you can define some limits per warehouse, per account, define if you want to get notified if you are reaching that limit, or if you want to shut down your warehouse once you get there. So please try to use resource monitor and define it either for your whole account or just per warehouse.
You talked about query timeouts earlier, so I'm going to steal that one. Yeah, so for those who don't know, query timeouts, I think there's different settings. There's like an account level, warehouse level, session level timeouts. And essentially what it does is it restricts how long a query can run for, which essentially says what's the most financial damage or cost a given query could have. Something I typically see customers do is start with kind of no query timeouts or the default 1 or 2 days, whatever it is, and then get stung by a query and then flip to the extreme end of I'm going to set a 1-hour query timeout on everything. So a piece of advice I'll offer on that is if you think about an extra small warehouse, 1 credit per hour, so that's $2 to $3 or $2 to $5. Call it $3. It's probably not worth interrupting someone's workflow and canceling a query that's run for an hour. It costs $3. Like a data scientist or an engineer's time is worth much more than that. So when you go to set query timeouts, they're a really effective control for minimizing the potential for really expensive queries, but just think about it from what's the max amount of cost I potentially want to allow, and then you can adjust the query timeout setting based on the warehouse size. So really want to emphasize that point.
Good points. In my opinion, the favorite cost governance feature really depends on where you are, where you stand within your Snowflake journey. So what I typically see is that every Snowflake implementation, every Snowflake journey passes certain maturity levels. So what we have here is really kind of a maturity model which spans various dimensions, and cost governance is really one of them. As Thomas said in the very beginning, right, it's kind of the first maturity level where you are using the Snowflake built-in features. Means you are using resource monitors, you are using the built-in usage dashboards to track your costs and analyze them. Sooner or later, you will realize that you need more information, right? You want to dig into the metadata. Means in maturity level 2, you are now understanding information schema, you are understanding the account usage, you are exploring, for example, also different parameters, like Ian said, right? So you're digging into the metadata, you're doing more with it, you are learning more details about Snowflake. Then, on top of that, sooner or later, you will come to maturity level 3, in my opinion, which is you're building really dashboards on top. Dashboards which are helping you keeping track across different KPIs. You are implementing, for example, certain frameworks, like Accenture's operational cockpit, where you really have automated actions, where you, for example, also can get notifications, these kind of things, right? But you're going kind of the next step in your cost governance to keep informed on an automated way and becoming really mature and more mature. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to add in here too. So these guys give you some great technical details. I'm going to pull it up a level, just a little bit, and say, when we talked about mindset, I would think of value and not just cost. And I hate it because Ian keeps stealing my thunder, but the value, what's the value of that time to a data scientist, or what's the value to your business? Think in terms of, this cost I'm spending, don't just think in terms of those dollars, but what value is it bringing to my business users? So think value, and sometimes you can think of that as a speedometer, right? Miles per hour, sales per Snowflake credit. What's the value there, instead of just what's the absolute number or cost associated with it? So, all right, so we've got just under 2 minutes. Let's do the lightning round real quick. So quick answers. What did you see? What announcements did you see that you're excited about? And I'll start with you, Ian.
Outside of the other things I mentioned already, dynamic tables in public preview. Very excited about that. Incrementalize all the things.
Okay, it's lightning round, but dynamic tables, how does that impact cost controls or your cost in Snowflake?
Sure. So the idea, dynamic tables are like materialized views for those who are familiar with that. The big difference is they support more complex SQL statements, so like joins, aggregation functions. I want to say window functions, but don't quote me on that. The reason that's so important is a big problem I see with a lot of customers is they'll have ETL jobs that just fully recreate tables every single day. And the reality is you only need to process new data that's come in, but that's really annoying to write, and I'm guilty of this too. I build full drop tables all the time. So I'm excited for dynamic tables because it'll literally just let you drop in that SQL statement and it will handle automatically incrementalizing.
Cool. Thomas?
I would say the warehouse utilization, because I can see many times that the customers are asking, okay, I have a given warehouse. How do I know if it is utilized properly? And now we will have a metric for that, so that will be really cool.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, so for me it's clearly budgets, because it's helping us to bring in this additional layer of metadata between our warehouses and, for example, our business areas to have better visibility into the spendings of different groups in our company. Yeah.
What about you, Sonny? We're leaving you out here.
Oh, somebody stole mine again. Warehouse utilization. The idea of, well, one, I'm really excited. They talked about budgets being in public preview, warehouse utilization. We've all been calculating that ourselves, so I'm excited about that. So I think that's it. I will say thank you, everybody. Really enjoyed this.